Welcome students, welcome to lecture number 20 where we will be continuing with module number 3 and the subject financial management. So under this module, as we know, unit 3 is all about sources of financing and cost of capital. So under this we have already seen the sources of financing, which was complete theory, and the cost of capital, where we have already completed cost of debenture capital and cost of preference capital as well as cost of term loans. So today we will be covering what is the cost of equity and cost of retained earnings. So let us understand what is the meaning of cost of equity capital. So when company raises its finance through the issue of equity shares, what is the cost that the company has to incur in respect of raising the finance by issuing equity shares? So it is nothing but the dividend that is payable by the company to its equity shareholders is the cost to the company for raising the funds by issuing equity shares. So obviously, students, if the company is going to issue shares by is going to raise its capital by issuing equity shares, it has to give to the equity shareholders certain dividend. Okay, and this dividend is nothing but the cost that the company is going to incur. Or in other words, we can say it is the minimum rate of return a company is required to earn on the part of equity finance. So whatever finance the company is raising, on that the minimum rate of return that the company wants to earn, that is nothing but the cost of equity capital, because the equity shareholders, they are the persons who will get last after paying off the debenture holders, after paying off the dividend to the preference shareholders. Whatever profit is remaining, the balance goes to the equity shareholders. So it is a minimum rate of return that a company is required to earn on the part of whatever equity is being financed by the equity shareholders. So this is the meaning of cost of equity capital. Now there are certain important points that we need to consider while calculating cost of equity shares. So as we have already seen while calculating the cost of various different sources of financing, here the first we saw how to calculate the cost of debenture capital. We saw how to calculate the cost of preference capital term loans. So there we seen that it was denoted by KD for debentures, KP for preference shares, KL for term loans. So similarly, for cost of equity capital, here it is denoted by KE, where K stands for the cost and E stands for equity capital. There is no need for taxation adjustment in case of equity capital. So as we seen that equity shareholders are the persons who are going to get other shareholders who are going to get last the profit, the share in the profit, that is in the form of dividend. They are the persons who are going to get the last share in the profit. So after the tax adjustment, whatever is remaining, that first goes to the preference shareholders, and balance, if any earning is remaining, that goes to the equity shareholders. So obviously there is no question of tax, because the distribution to the equity shareholders is happening after tax adjustment. So from the earnings, after minusing the tax, after whatever balance is remaining, that goes to the preference shareholders. After minusing that amount given to the preference shareholders, whatever balance is remaining, then that goes to the equity shareholders. Therefore the question of tax does not come into picture. So whenever you're going to calculate the cost of equity capital, you just ignore tax, don't consider tax. Now, in case of debentures and preference, we saw the different formulas to calculate the cost. Similarly, in order to calculate the cost of equity capital, we have different formulas under different methods. That means to calculate cost of equity capital, you can use any of the approaches, which is dividend yield method, dividend yield plus growth, earning yield method, realized yield method, or CAPM. CAPM is nothing but capital asset pricing model. So students, there are different approaches, and under this different approaches, there are different formulas in which you can calculate the cost of equity capital. So in the exam, they can ask you to calculate cost of equity capital using any of these methods. So the method will be mentioned in the examination, which method you are supposed to use in order to calculate the cost. CAPM is very, very important. It is most frequently asked in the exams. And from the remaining four methods, any method can be asked. So just remember, there are five methods in which you can calculate the cost of equity capital. That is dividend yield method, dividend yield plus growth method, earning yield method, realized yield method, and capital asset pricing method model. Now we will individually see that why and how this method is to be used and what is the formula under this method in order to calculate cost of equity. So first let us go move ahead to dividend yield approach. So under this method, now dividend yield approach, under this method, the cost of equity is obviously nothing but the dividend that is payable to the equity shareholders. So how? So under this approach, the cost of equity is to be calculated by dividing dividend per share by the price per share. So obviously dividend is paid for per share basis. Therefore, under dividend yield approach, the formula will be dividend divided by the market price per share of the equity shares into 100. And this is also known as dividend price ratio. So if in exam they ask you to calculate cost of equity using dividend price ratio, that means they are asking you under dividend yield approach. So students, remember that in dividend yield approach, your whatever dividend the company is paying per share, okay, it is paying per share in respect of the market price of the share. So here the formula to calculate dividend, here the formula to calculate cost of equity, you can see on the right hand side is nothing but dividend per share divided by market price per share into 100, because obviously the cost of equity dividend is nothing but the cost of equity capital is nothing but the dividend that the company is paying to the equity shareholders. So this is E is nothing but D divided by MP into 100. So this is dividend yield approach. So in exam, if they ask you dividend yield approach, you know that you have to use dividend divided by MP into 100. Next is dividend yield plus growth approach. So here we see it's only dividend yield approach. Like every year the same amount of dividend can be paid, but here there is dividend yield plus growth. So obviously plus growth means the only change in the formula that you're going to do is add growth rate, that is add G. So what is the meaning of this method? Let us understand. In this method, there is a growth of a company and also the market value of its share shows an increasing trend. So what does it mean under this approach is the dividend is growing, that is the company is growing. Obviously when the company is growing, the earnings are growing, the dividend also will grow. So under this method there is a growth in the company and the market value of the share is also increasing because of the growth in the company. So here again the formula for calculating KE on the right hand side you can see KE is nothing but D1 divided by MP plus G into 100. Now what is D1 students? D1 is nothing but expected dividend per share at the end of the year. Okay. D0 is at the beginning of the year. D1 is at the end of the year. So suppose at the beginning of the year it is denoted by D0, and if there is growth rate then you have to add 1 plus G, then you will get D1. So how D1 is arrived? How do you arrive at D1? It is nothing but D0 in the bracket 1 plus G, because there is a growth rate. Dividend at the beginning and end will not be the same. Since the company is growing, the dividend also will grow. Therefore, in order to get the dividend at the end of the year to the dividend at the beginning of the year, you need to add the growth rate, and therefore you will get D1. So this is D1 because since there is a growth in the company divided by MP, that is market price of the share, plus the growth rate of dividend into 100. Suppose if D1 is not given in the exam and just dividend is given, so how do you need to find D1? D1 is calculated as D1 is equals to D0 in the bracket 1 plus G. So this is dividend yield plus growth approach. So remember, this approach is to be used when the company is growing, when the company's earnings is growing, when the company's market price is growing. That time you need to find out KE by using D1 divided by MP plus G into 100. And how do you calculate D1? D1 is nothing but D0 in the bracket 1 plus G. Next is earning yield approach. Now, earning yield approach is under this method, the minimum rate of return required to be earned on the market price of the share is the cost of equity capital. As I already told you that the minimum rate, when I explained the meaning of cost of capital, I said that cost of capital, equity capital, is either the dividend that the company is paying or the minimum rate of return which the company is expecting to earn from its market price of the share is the cost of equity capital. So again, the formula under earning yield approach is KA is nothing but E divided by MP into 100. So where E is nothing but your earnings per share. Since it is earning yield approach, so what is the earnings happening on the share per share in the market? So earnings per share divided by market price per share into 100 will give you the KE under earnings yield approach. Now, suppose if it is with growth rate. Similarly, we saw, right, dividend yield approach, dividend yield plus growth approach. Now, this is earning yield approach. Suppose if it is earning yield with growth rate, then what you need to do is just simply to the formula add G. So, therefore, K is nothing but E divided by MP plus G into 100. So, you're just adding the growth rate in earnings. That is the only difference. So in earnings yield approach, what is happening? There are two things you have to see whether in the problem they are asking you with growth rate or without growth rate. So if they are asking you without growth rate, you have to use the formula K is nothing but E divided by MP into 100, and with growth rate is E divided by MP plus G, because you have to just add the growth rate. Next, realized yield approach. So under realized yield approach, what is happening, students? So under realized yield approach, the cost is calculated actually on the actual earnings of all the investments that is made. So this method is based on actual earnings, what the company is actually realizing. That means in the form of earnings, what the company is actually getting, and not projected, that is not predicted once, but on the actual earnings, this particular uh, cost of equity capital is based. So this method, when I say realized yield method, this method is based on the actual earnings and not projected ones, okay, in respect of all the investments. And what is the formula for calculating this KE? KE is nothing but D1 plus P1 divided by P0 minus 1 into 100. Now let us understand what the different terms here. Your D1 is nothing but dividend per share at the end of the year. Okay. Plus P1 is nothing but price per share at the end of the year. You have to divide this two by the price per share at the beginning of the year. See, D1 or P1, it means end of the year. D0 or P0 means at the beginning of the year. So P0 is nothing but price per share at the beginning of the year minus 1 into 100. So here, under realized yield method, you are going to calculate based on the actual earning. So actual earning you are going to find out by this particular formula, that is D1 plus P1, the whole divided by P0 minus 1 into 100. So you're taking the price and the dividend at the end of the year and dividing it by the price at the beginning of the year. So by using this formula, you get the cost of equity capital under realized yield approach, and this realized yield approach is based on the actual earnings on all the investments. Next is the capital asset pricing model, and this is very important, students, from exam point of view. Now, what does this capital asset pricing model states? So this model is based on the relationship between required rate of return on risk-free security, non-diversifiable risk, okay, of the company, and the cost of equity capital. So here, when I say that it is required return on risk-free securities. Now, students, what is risk-free securities? They are those securities which do not carry any risk. Like suppose we say government bonds, they do not carry any risk. When I say FDs, do they carry any risk? No, there is a fixed percentage of interest that you're going to get irrespective the market is up or down. So there is no risk attached to such securities in which you're investing. So required rate of return on risk-free securities is covered in this capital asset pricing model. Non-diversifiable risk means which cannot be diversified, which cannot be shifted. So this risk is covered here, and the cost of equity capital. So now let us understand how to calculate equity capital using this capital asset pricing model. So capital asset pricing model is based on certain assumptions, students. Only when these assumptions are fulfilled, then only you can calculate the cost of equity capital using this particular model. So there are few assumptions. Before we get into this model, we need to fulfill certain basic assumptions that this particular model works based on these assumptions. Okay, so this particular formula which has been derived here on the right hand side is based only when these basic assumptions are fulfilled or this basic assumptions are done with. So first, risk averse investors. So under capital asset pricing model, when you're using this particular model, the investors are supposed to be risk averse. What do you mean by this? That is, the investors are reluctant to take risk. Means that investors are basically those investors who do not want to take any type of risk, okay, and they want to diversify in order to reduce their risk. See, if you put all your investment, if you put all your if you put all your investments in one security, that means your risk is high. Suppose the value of the security falls down, that means your investment the investment profit will fall down. But when you diversify the securities, the investments, what will happen? Your risk will reduce. So risk averse investors are nothing but the investors are basically do not want to take the risk. They are reluctant to take the risk, and they are doing the diversification in order to reduce their risk. Next, maximizing the utility of terminal wealth. Now, see, any investor under this particular model will aim at maximizing the wealth rather than the return on wealth. So what he will want that the end terminal wealth means at the end he should get the maximum wealth. So here the investor's aim is only to receive create more of wealth. Next, choices on the basis of risk and return. Choices on choice on the basis of risk and return. Investors under this, investors are going to make their investment decision on the basis of risk and return. So now we know how we are going to measure risk and return. I think if you all have studied in statistics in your first semester, we saw that the risk and return is measured by the variance and the mean of portfolio returns, correct? So here the basis of choosing and any investments will be based on the risk and return, which will again be based on the variance and the portfolio means, and then they will select, and then and then the investors will make the investment decisions in such a way where the risk is less and the return is high. Next, similar expectation of risk and return. So all the investors under this particular model will be having the same similar expectations of risk and return. In other words, if I have to tell you that all the investors expectation will be the same in respect of risk and return. Sorry students for the disturbance. Okay, next is identical time horizon. So when I say identical time horizon, it means that you have to understand that the capital asset pricing model is based on one more assumption, that all the investors are having the same time horizon. That means that the investors are going to buy the securities or assets at one point of time, and they are going to sell them at the same point in the future. So means the buying also is going to happen in the same point of time, and the selling also is going to happen at the same point of time in respect of all the investors. Next, free access to all available information. So one more important assumption of under this model is that the investors are going to have free access to all the available information at no cost. Okay, so in respect of any specific information regarding the market, so all the information will be available with the investors before making the investment. Okay, and that too at no cost. Next, there is a risk-free asset and there is no restriction on borrowing and lending at risk-free rate. So risk-free asset is simply or very essential to simplify the complex covariance. Covariance means risk-free asset is those asset, as I've already told you all, that which does not carry any risk. Okay, and there is absolutely no restriction on the borrowing and lending at risk-free rate. That means you can easily invest in the risk-free assets, or you can you can sell your risk-free asset without any restriction, okay, at the risk-free rate. Next, there is no taxes and transaction cost. So what do you mean by there is no taxes and transaction cost is, here whenever you are entering into any particular investment, there will be no taxes under this particular model, students, I'm telling, and no any kind of transaction cost that will be involved. Total availability of assets is fixed and assets are marketable and divisible. So what does this means? That in this particular pricing model, the assets in which you're going to invest are fixed, and whatever the assets you're investing, they can be either marketable, that is they can be easily traded in the market, and can be divisible, that you can diversify that particular asset. So these are certain basic assumptions only when you are following capital asset pricing model, students. So these assumptions hold good only for this particular approach, for this particular model. Okay, not for the rest that we have seen in calculating the cost of equity capital. So cost of equity capital is again nothing but RF plus B in the bracket RM minus RF. Now, as we know that in capital asset pricing model, there is a required rate of return on risk-free securities. So RF stands for rate of return on risk-free securities. Why RF? R stands for risk and F stands for free. So risk-free securities plus the beta coefficient that is required to calculate the rate of return on the market portfolio. So just understand this. RF is nothing but rate on return on risk-free securities, plus in capital asset pricing model, we saw that we also have a rate of return on market portfolio. So RM is nothing but rate of return on market portfolio, RM, that is rate of return on market portfolio. minus RF, the whole you're going to multiply with the beta coefficient. So this is a particular formula to calculate cost of capital under capital asset pricing model. And you know, beta coefficient is nothing but it is to measure the sensitivity or correlation of a security. That is the reason you're multiplying this with the beta in order to see the sensitivity of the security. So once again, when we see capital asset pricing model, the formula is equals to RF plus beta multiplied by RM minus RF, where RF is the risk-free security, beta is nothing but B is nothing but the beta coefficient, RM minus RF is RM is the rate of return on market portfolio, minus RF is the rate of return on risk-free security. So let us take a quick recap for the formulas for calculating KE. So first we have 5 approaches. Any of the approach can be asked in the exam. You just need to know the formula below it. So the 5 approaches is dividend yield method, dividend yield plus growth method, earning yield method, realized yield method, and capital asset pricing method. So dividend yield method, how do you calculate KE is equals to D divided by MP into 100. When it is growth rate, you have to just use D1 divided by MP plus G into 100. Earning in method, you use E. So E, that is the earnings per share divided by market price per share into 100. Realized yield method is based on your actual earnings. Therefore, D1 plus P1 divided by P0 minus 1 into 100. And when you use capital asset pricing model, the formula to calculate K is nothing but RF plus beta in the bracket RM minus RF. So what is happening in this particular different approaches is you have to see what kind of information is given in the problem in the exam and use a particular approach. See students, there can be two things. Either in the exam they can give you which approach you have to use and then you have to follow that approach, or either they can give you an information relating to a particular approach. So suppose if they give you earnings per share and suppose if they don't specify the approach you have to use, suppose they don't specify the method you have to use in the exam, but based on the information given in the problem, you yourself have to ascertain which method you have to use. So suppose if they give you in the exam earnings per share and market price per share. So tell me students, which method are you going to follow? If in the exam they give you earning price per share is suppose rupees 20 or market price per share is suppose 25, which method are you going to use? They will not specify the approach. So you, based on the information, you have to ascertain which method are you supposed to follow. So can any student tell me which method we are supposed to use?
Capital asset pricing.
Yes?
Earning yield CAPM method.
You are not audible. Suppose they tell
Dividend yield method.
no students, suppose they give you that earnings per share is given, market price per share is given, which method will you use to calculate the cost of equity?
Earning yield method.
Very good. Suppose I have given you dividend per share plus the growth rate, which method will you use?
Dividend yield plus growth.
Yield plus growth.
Okay. Suppose they have given you the price of the share at the beginning and end of the period. Which method will you use?
Realized yield method. Realized yield method.
Okay. Suppose if they have given you information about risk-free securities, which method will you use?
CAPM method.
So students, exactly, it is not necessary that always in the exam they will tell you this method to use. They will just give you information in such a way where you yourself have to select the method. Okay. Or in sometimes the problem may specify which method is to be used. So even if the problem does not specify which method is to be used, based on the information given on the problem, you yourself have to select the particular approach, use the formula and find out KE. So this was all about finding out the cost of equity capital. Next, cost of retained earnings. So let us understand the meaning. The cost of retained earnings may be the rate of return which the existing shareholders would have got if the retained earnings will be invested somewhere else appropriately. Obviously, students, retained earnings means the save out of the earnings, a portion of it is retained by the company, saved by the company. So what if this would not be saved by the company? What would happen if this retained earnings would not be saved by the company? It would be invested by the company somewhere else. After investment, the company would have got return, and this return would be shared to the equity shareholders. So the cost of retained earnings is the rate of return which the shareholders would have got if retained earnings were invested somewhere else and were not saved. So this retained earnings is denoted by KR, where K stands for cost and R is nothing but retained earnings. Now, formula to calculate retained earnings. See, students, the cost of retained earnings is nothing but the cost of equity capital is the same. I'll tell you why. Because see, cost of retained earnings is nothing but the minimum rate of return which the equity shareholders would have got, students, would have got if those earnings were not saved but were invested somewhere else. Okay, retained earnings means the savings where the earnings are retained. Retained means saved by the company. Suppose if it was not saved by the company, company would invest it somewhere, company would get returns on that, and that returns would be shared with the equity shareholders. So remember, always the KR is equals to KE. KR is nothing but the cost of retained earnings. KE is nothing but cost of equity capital. So if in the exam, they ask you to calculate KE and KR, answer for KE as well as the KR will be the same, because the formula for calculating KR is nothing but KR is equals to KE. But in that you have certain different information. If given in the problem, the formula may slightly change. So if tax is given in the problem, for KE the tax will not impact, but for KR is equals to KE into 1 minus T into 100. So simply you have to multiply it with the tax rate, 1 minus tax rate into 100. But always remember your KR is equals to KE, because in KR also, if the savings would not have happened, it would go to the equity shareholders. So the cost to the equity shareholders is nothing but the minimum rate of return which the equity shareholders expects on its investments. So if tax rate is given, KR is equals to KE into 1 minus tax rate into 100. So suppose if tax and brokerage is given, because to make this transaction brokerage, if it is involved, then KR is equals to KE into 1 minus tax rate into 1 minus brokerage into 100. And if personal tax is given and long-term capital gain is given, then it is KE into 1 minus TP. 1 minus TP is the personal tax rate. The whole divided by K minus TG. TG is the tax on long-term capital gain. See, G stands for gain, P stands for personal tax into 100. So this formula you have to keep changing depending upon the information given in the problem. Suppose no information is given about the tax, brokerage, or your personal tax or long-term capital gain, then simply your answer will be KR is equals to KE. So suppose the cost of equity capital is 15%, then your cost of retained earnings will also be 15%. You need not do any further calculation. Just your calculation will change if any of these elements is given in the problem. Suppose tax is given, you have to simply multiply KE into 1 minus tax rate into 100. Brokerage is given as well as tax is given, then 1 minus tax into 1 minus brokerage into 100. Personal tax is given or long-term capital gain tax is given. So you have to just multiply 1 minus TP, the whole divided by 1 minus TG into 100. So this is cost of retained earnings. So in our next class, we will be seeing problems on cost of equity and cost on retained earnings. Thank you so much, students. We are done for the session for today. Thank you.